All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about one of the most overlooked miracles in the Bible, Jesus feeding the 4,000. Now, if that sounds kind of familiar, well, it should. At first glance, it looks almost exactly like a carbon copy of him feeding the 5,000. But what if I told you it's not a repeat at all? What if, hidden inside this story, in its location, in the numbers, and even in the disciples' really strange reaction, there's a completely different, powerful message about who God is for?
I mean, when you put these two stories side by side, it's wild how similar they are. In both, Jesus is out in the middle of nowhere, a massive crowd has been hanging out with him for a while, and, well, everyone's getting hungry. Jesus feels compassion, asks the disciples what they've got, and they come up with just a handful of loaves and fish. It's like a serious case of biblical déjà vu.
And this leads us to the big question, right? Why would the gospel writers bother to include a story that just seems like a slightly different version of a miracle they just told us about? Was it just sloppy editing, or is there a crucial lesson here that we're supposed to dig a little deeper to find? Let's investigate. Okay, our first clue is hiding in a detail that is so easy to just read right past, but it changes absolutely everything. Location, location, location. Where the second miracle happens is the whole key to unlocking its meaning. See, this isn't just some other random spot by the Sea of Galilee. This is the Decapolis, which literally means the 10 cities. And this was a region that was heavily Greek, a place where Gentiles, that is, non-Jews, were the main population. So the crowd Jesus is about to feed is a totally different group of people than the first time around. And this wasn't some accident. You can actually see a pattern in his journey that's really revealing. Jesus has this big confrontation with the religious leaders back in Israel, and then he deliberately leaves. He goes to the pagan areas of Tyre and Sidon, and now he shows up here, in the Decapolis. He is physically, and you could say ideologically, moving away from the heart of Jewish territory and straight into the Gentile world.
Okay, let's move on to our second clue, and you'll see how this starts to build. The specific numbers in this story, the 4,000 people, the 7 loaves of bread, the 7 baskets of leftovers, these are not random. In the ancient world, numbers were just packed with symbolic meaning, and we need to crack that code.
So the key to all this is a practice called gematria. It's a bit of a fancy word, but the idea is simple. Back then, Hebrew letters also doubled as numbers. So numbers weren't just for counting things. They could carry this whole other layer of meaning. It was like a kind of symbolic shorthand that the original audience would have totally picked up on.
So let's look at our numbers. First up, the number 4. 4 often stood for the 4 corners of the earth. You know, the whole world. It was a common way to talk about all the nations outside of Israel. In other words, the Gentiles. So 4,000 people isn't just a head count, it's a symbol for the entire Gentile community.
And then you've got the number 7. Oh man, 7 is one of the most powerful numbers in the entire Bible. It consistently represents divine completion, perfection, wholeness, like the 7 days of creation. And here we have it, 7 loaves of bread and 7 baskets of leftovers. So when you put it all together in a chart like this, the two distinct messages just pop. The first miracle, feeding 5,000 Jews with 12 baskets left over, that showed that Jesus was more than enough for the 12 tribes of Israel. But this second miracle, feeding 4,000 Gentiles with 7 loaves and having 7 baskets left over, the message here is that Jesus' perfect, complete teaching is for all nations. It's for the entire world. All right, now for our final clue. And this one might be the most revealing of all. It's the absolutely bizarre reaction from the people who should have known better. The disciples. I mean, think about this. After they personally witnessed Jesus feed a crowd of 5,000 people with next to nothing, the disciples ask this question? It's baffling, right? It's like they have total amnesia. How could they possibly ask where they're going to get bread after what they've already seen with their own 2 eyes? But what if their question wasn't about a lack of food? What if it was about a lack of imagination? Could it be that in their minds, which were shaped by centuries of tradition, the idea that Jesus would perform the same miraculous act of mercy for a crowd of Gentiles was just unthinkable? Maybe they didn't see a food problem. Maybe they saw a people problem.
And that, right there, brings us to the final reveal. When we put all these clues together, the Gentile location, the symbolic numbers, and the disciples' own bias, this so-called repeated miracle suddenly transforms into this groundbreaking statement. So here's the bottom line. Jesus deliberately goes into Gentile territory to perform a miracle that numerically shouts a message for all nations. He isn't just repeating himself, he's blowing up the definition of who his message is for.
He's showing his disciples, and he's showing us, that God's compassion isn't limited by borders or cultural lines. It's for absolutely everyone.
And if you need any more proof, here it is. The text says that this Gentile crowd, these people who didn't grow up knowing the Torah or the God of Israel, they saw what Jesus did, and they glorified the God of Israel. Mission accomplished. The miracle did exactly what it was supposed to do. It revealed God's compassion to people who were considered outsiders, and they responded with praise.
So the story that seems like a simple repeat is actually a profound challenge. It forced the disciples to look their own biases right in the face, biases about who God's mercy was really for. And it leaves us with a pretty critical question to think about. What preconceived notions about people, about faith, about who's in and who's out, are we being asked to challenge today?